Yo, what's going on YouTube? Kronos here, and welcome back to the PSO2 video. So today's video, we're actually going to be doing a bit of a follow-up to my recent video talking about more or less the truth behind multi-weaponing. If you guys are new to the channel though, real quick, my name is Chrono. I do content over here on YouTube daily. Would much appreciate a subscribe as we claw our way up to that 10K mark by the end of the year. We crushed 5K and we're getting close to 6K at the moment, so would much appreciate you guys helping out with that. But let's go ahead and jump into this. So today's video is going to have a lot less math in it. Not that yesterday's or the other video had a ton of math in it, but this one's going to be a little bit more of just an explanation. And I did want to correct a couple of things because some things did get missed in that video itself. So quick disclaimer, what we're talking about basically is the multi-weapon system. And the reason of that previous video, if you haven't seen it, was to more or less either approve or prove or disprove a theory that had been going around the community. Essentially, there's actually a 10% damage differential between main class and subclass weapons, and what was being said more or less was that you were able to take a multi-weapon that had the base of your main class and then utilize adding your subclass weapon to that base to be able to do the same amount of damage as you would as if it was your main class as well. Yesterday's video proved that that is not the case. Basically, whenever you're using a weapon of your subclass, whether it be multi-weaponed or not, the damage is always going to be less than if you were using a main class weapon. So just to clarify, that was the whole point of that video itself. That is what that was to prove and show all of my testing during that process itself. So if anything got missed there, it probably isn't the way that I presented it, and I apologize for that. But that was the entire purpose of that video itself, was just to prove that one theory, not the exact damage differential, not whether or not it's better to multi-weapon weapons or not multi-weapon weapons. That's a completely different conversation. But it was just to prove that specific theory, because to be honest, if it did work that way, that would be pretty dope and cause a lot of really cool combinations to come up. However, it's a bit more restrictive than that process. So why are we making this follow-up video? There's actually one thing I did want to mention specifically, because it wasn't really, well, I guess I'm honestly going to say it wasn't correct in the previous video. Now, again, granted, it didn't make a huge impact on the actual numbers. If anything, this correction only is going to prove my original theory even more correct, but there is a difference in the actual damage difference between main class and subclass. The commenter was in the name of Glenn. Glenn, thank you so much for letting us know about that. It was Glenn McLaughlin. I probably totally messed that up, sorry. But basically they wanted to mention that there is a difference in damage, yes, by 10%. However, it is main class that has a 10% buff. It is not subclass that has a 10% nerf technically. Now, well, it's still 10% on both ends, right? That doesn't make a difference. Well, it actually does make a difference overall in the numbers. It just accounts for the slight bit of rounding that I was talking about in my previous video. If anything else, it just makes the numbers more solid to understand that difference if you're going through the math on your own. So if you wanted to check behind me, just make sure to make that difference in the actual data that you're looking at whenever you go through it on your own. It is main class has a 10% buff, not that subclass has a 10% nerf. And again, thank you, Glenn, for checking my knowledge. I did make that mistake, and I do want to make that very, very clear to you guys. I do hate spreading misinformation, so whenever I do mess up, feel free to let me know about it. I'll be more than happy to come behind it and make sure I get that cleaned up. So that's really the most I had to talk to when it came to like any mistakes or anything when it comes to data. I did also want to speak to a few other things, because a lot of things have been popping up recently, or people have been popping with the questions, well, what's the point of multi-weaponing? Why should I even bother? I guess this just makes it so it's more restrictive. Sega's made this more complicated again, so on and so forth. But that's not necessarily the case. One thing that we experienced in beta quite a lot was that playing a main class didn't really seem to matter that much in some classes situations. For example, Hunter as well as Force didn't really have a place to play as a main class back in the beta based on the skills we had available to us. Now, one of the pieces of advice that we provided to the dev team was that, hey, these classes should have a reason to be a main class if we want to use these weapons. Well, I think they took that and went with it a little harder than we thought they would originally. It seems that, again, that 10% damage differential or 10% buff to main class weapons while you're using that main class seems to be the reason, or what they added on, because to my knowledge that wasn't there in the beta. It actually wasn't there at all. It now is there in full game, it seems like, but it wasn't there in the beta, at least from my experiences. Now, I didn't do hardcore number crunching in the beta because we were very limited on time, so your mileage may vary. I didn't do the same testing I did with Bujin this time around, but it's something to keep in mind as far as what we're looking at. Now, with the full skill trees, I noticed that we had other reasons to have these classes as main classes. So that 10% damage buff may not have been needed, but I still appreciate it. So it still poses the question, why do multi-weapons matter? Like, I can switch weapons on the fly with hotkeys. Why is that big of a deal? Well, some classes have really interesting weapons that you can combine together. The idea here would be, if you're looking at damage potential or damage output, that you combine classes or combine weapons within your class itself to gain that damage upper hand. For example, one thing I've seen happen quite a bit recently has been Fighter using Knuckles for the normal attack and the sway, or the weapon action, to parry abilities, because they do both of those things very, very well. But multi-weaponing a double saber on that, because double saber has some useful PAs. Right now Julian Dance is broken, we all are aware of that, but it does a crazy amount of damage, as well as other abilities that you can use. I'm thinking of the circle PA name off the top of my head and I can't remember it, and perfectly honest, I'm probably not going to remember it, but having that PA, specifically the one that circles around your character when you throw your double saber around, does offer iframes, or basically guard frames, around you. So it's pretty useful to have in a pinch if you don't know, when that attack is going to hit you. Basically, combinations like that when you're looking for damage do work out pretty well. So weapons within your main class, if you're looking from it from a damage perspective, that could be pretty cool. But let's say you're not looking from a damage perspective. Maybe your weapon has all the tools that it needs, and you might be looking from a subclass, or not subclass, but a utility perspective. Well, something like the idea behind maybe Talus, or something like Wired Lance, where Wired Lance weapon action still works even if you're not using Hunter as a subclass whatsoever, or as a main class, because you can take any weapon really and slap on a Wired Lance with it, as long as they're the same category or the same series. Then you're able to use the weapon action as part on your palette to be able to gap close to your target without needing to swap weapons. That just lets you do that much faster. Now granted, you normally could do that by just equipping the weapon, but keep in mind, you can equip a weapon if you don't have the subclass enabled. However, as long as your main class weapon, or the base, is the weapon that's useful for your main class, that weapon is going to be able to utilize stuff from the sub weapon that was added to it during the multi-weapon process. Things like normal attack and the weapon action. You only need to have the class involved if you're using the photon arts. So there is still more to this system, and there's more that we're going to explore overall, and I'm sure there are going to be some crazy combinations people come up with as time goes on, but keep in mind, it's the very start. Balancing is still going to happen. Changes are going to happen. We're going to invest money, and we're going to invest resources into some crazy stuff, and then have to redo the entire process all over again when we figure out something else that's insanely broken that someone else comes up with. But I'm going to go ahead and cut it here, guys. I just wanted to go ahead and do a quick follow-up to that video itself, make sure we took care of that correction and credit the right people. But what do you guys think? Is there anything that you've come up with that's been kind of crazy? I know some people in the comments have been listing off what they've gone with, but I didn't want to discourage people from trying out new things. That is something that tends to happen quite a bit, and it's still a lot to be experimented within this entire process. So definitely don't want that to happen for you guys. But anyway, guys, as always, like is appreciated. Subscribe if you want to keep up with the content. Click on the bell icon if you want to be notified of videos as well as community posts. And join us over on Discord or follow over on Twitter for notifications via those two avenues. Make sure to comment you're part of the End Gang, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace out.